friends, and welcome back to another video. So today I thought I'd just share some books that I think will help you get out of a reading slump if you're currently in one, or some books that I think will help you get back into reading if you haven't read books in a while. So first I'm going to start off with some romance recommendations, and the first recommendation I have is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Now, this might not be your cup of tea, but it is about the relationship between the first son of the United States and a royal prince from England, and kind of some of the difficulties and hurdles that they have to navigate in their relationship. But it's super cute and super fun. The relationship is just adorable. I absolutely love this book and I highly recommend it. It is so cute seeing them interact with each other, and it is definitely an enemies to lovers story. So you get to see them going from hating each other to becoming friends to becoming something more. And I think the story is just such a cute, fun rom-com and something that I recommend if you're interested. Alright, so the next two books that I have to recommend are two books of the Brown Sisters series. So there's 3 books total, but I've read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and I highly recommend that you read these books. These are super fun, lighthearted, British rom-com stories. The first one is about a girl who is so focused, she's like computer savvy, very focused on her career, and she doesn't really have time for fun. So the whole point of the book is to hang out and have fun, and she meets this motorcycle guy who is gonna help her with that. So it's super cute. And then the second book I recently read is Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and the main character has kind of struggled to keep down any kind of job. She's a little bit of a mess, and her parents have given her an ultimatum to get her act together. And she ends up interviewing for this position at a B&B, and our hero is the owner of this B&B. So she ends up interviewing to be a chef there, and he doesn't want to give her the position, but she ends up accidentally running him over, and then they have to deal with the fallout of that. They are also an enemies to lovers in this kind of situation. It's super fun. She is such a vivacious character. I loved all of her energy, her liveliness. It is a grumpy sunshine book as well. She is so sunshiny, happy, like beautiful, and he is a little bit grumpy because of some past trauma and issues that he has. Also, there is some really nice autism rep in this story. So both of the characters are on the autism spectrum. And in Get a Life, Chloe Brown, there is another type of disability rep. So I love that they have this diverse kind of representation. And I think that there'll be stories that you'll absolutely love. So the next romance recommendation I have is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. And this is a single mom romance. So it is about this woman who has a 6-year-old daughter, I believe she is. And she is looking to branch out and go back out there into the love scene and the dating scene. So she signs up for this app that claims that they can find you your perfect match based off of your DNA, which I think is a super cool concept. And I know that there's a movie kind of inspired by this too, but she is just looking to find someone to date from this app, and our hero is actually a developer for the app, and he actually gets on the app in order to prove that it works. So he wants to be able to like find a date and find someone to like fall in love with, basically, in order to prove that the app works to sell it to more people. So I think it's really beautiful. It's such a cute romance. I love that it's a single mom romance and we get that kind of dynamic going on with her daughter as well. And I think it is one that you'll definitely love. It's such a quick read. I can't wait to read the next book by Christina Lauren, which is the sequel to this, but I do recommend The Soulmate Equation a lot. The final romance recommendation that I have is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, and there's also a Netflix series of this up, so I think that it is a perfect time to get into it. They are graphic novels, so they're also super fun, fast, quick read, and I think you'll absolutely love it. It is a story of Nick and Charlie, who are teenagers in this secondary school who become friends, and they are very different. Like, Nick is a very sporty type, Charlie's just kind of nerdy, quiet. So it's kind of them navigating that relationship, and it is about coming out, about figuring out who you like, who you don't like, what kind of your interests are romantically. So there is a lot of like self-exploration in that. And it's a beautiful story of friendship, of first love in high school, and I think it is something that a lot of people will really like. It is such a cute queer love story, and I highly recommend it. Alright, so the next book that I have is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is more of a memoir, but this leads into my next section. And this book is super interesting because we get a lot of behind the scenes information on some of the experiences that Jeanette McCurdy had growing up. and growing up on Nickelodeon and some of the abuses of that. And we also get a lot of information about Dan Schneider and the horrible, terrible things he was doing to children on the sets of Nickelodeon. Mainly focus on the relationship between Jeanette and her mother. And her mother, from the moment that she was born, had cancer, but they have a very complicated dynamic because her mom has like somehow survived so long with having a very aggressive form of cancer, but because of that puts a lot of pressure on her daughter. So Jeanette has to provide for her family from a very early age. She's taken to a lot of auditions. She is like forced to be an actor because that is something that her mother always wanted to do as a child but never did. So she's really pushed into this life of fame, of all this Hollywood glitz and glam, because this is something that her mother really wanted. And it is really clear that the relationship is very toxic and abusive. Her mom has these expectations of her. She doesn't want her to ever gain weight. She forces these anorexic ideas that she has onto her daughter. And it is one that I think you should definitely read and learn about her experiences. She does a really great job at just defining why she is the way that she is, why she's left the spotlight now that she is an adult. And I think it's a very poignant read, one that I highly recommend. And I think that this memoir really had a lot to say. There are some memoirs I read that feel like they don't have a lot of a point of what they're saying, but she had a lot of really important things to say and she delivered an important message in this book. So I highly recommend that you read it. And if you're interested, I recommend that you check it out through audiobook because Jeanette actually narrates it herself. So you get more of her insights in that. We get to hear it from her voice. So it's her words spoken in her own voice. So I think that's really a beautiful way of going through the story, but I highly recommend it. The next book that I have to talk about is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. And this book follows an older man who has kind of been on his own. He lost his wife and he has grieved her. He doesn't really do a lot with his life. He's very much of a recluse. He doesn't like to leave his home. He doesn't like for things to be loud and noisy. He's a little bit of a grump, but these new neighbors come and try to befriend him and they try to get him involved in their life, and he ends up helping this pregnant woman who is his new neighbor learn how to drive, and they end up forming this friendship between the older man and this family. And it's a really beautiful story, but you can really see that Uwe's struggling with his own personal demons inside, and that he's been planning to end his life for a while, so he keeps being interrupted by these neighbors, but that is his plan. And it is a very sad story, I will say that, and there are trigger warnings for loss of a life, for suicide, for ending one's own life, and self-harm, so just know that going in. But it is really like a last chance for this person who has felt like they've kind of experienced what they were going to experience and they have nothing left to live for. But he is questioning whether he should continue to live or not now that he has a new reason to live for with helping these neighbors and all of that. So it is a sad story, but it is one that I definitely recommend. The next book that I recommend if you're in a reading slump is in a different genre. It is a psychological thriller. So this is not something that I typically read a lot of, but if you're interested in this kind of genre, I think you'll really like this. And the book is The Push by Ashley Audrain. And note, there are a lot of trigger warnings for this book. There are trigger warnings for postpartum depression, for suicide, for neglect and abuse, and there's a lot of other triggers. I recommend that you look them up before you look into getting the book or reading the book. But just note, there are a lot of triggers for this book. So it is basically about this woman who becomes a mother, and she has all these joys and expectations of what it'll be like to be a mother. She's very excited to have a child. And then when her child is born, she has issues being able to connect with her daughter. She doesn't feel very close to her, and she thinks that there is something really wrong with her daughter, that her daughter is going to do something terrible. And throughout the book, we are kind of grappling with this idea of, is it all in the mother's head? Or is her daughter actually exhibiting all these strange behaviors? And there's a lot of it where she questions her own sanity too, because she's wondering, am I just thinking these things of my child and there's nothing wrong? And so there is that aspect and that element going on. And she ends up being estranged from her spouse. They end up divorcing. The spouse gets married again. So there is kind of some interaction between her and her ex-husband's new wife and their child that they have. And it's a really interesting story about motherhood, about depression, about what it means to be a good parent, and also about these issues that they're having with this child and it is one that is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. So you're going to keep wondering the whole time whether this child has actually got negative intentions going on, or if it's just a mother making it up in her head, right until the end. And the end is really crazy. So I recommend that you read this. It is very action-packed, very suspenseful, so you won't be bored reading this, and I think it is a great read to get out of a reading slump. Moving on to another genre, these are my fantasy recommendations. So the first recommendation I have are the Saga volumes by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. And these are graphic novels, so they're very easy to read, they're very quick, they have a lot of beautiful illustrations, so that'll definitely help you get out of a reading slump. But it is also about this really fun intergalactic story of this child that is born to these two people who fall in love with each other. One is from a moon and one is from a planet that are fighting each other. So it is their story of trying to survive the politics of their universe as these two warring moon and planet are going at it. And the book is told from their daughter's perspective, and they have to protect this child who is an interspecies child that is born and is wanted by both governments because they want to eradicate her because they don't want the two sides to be friendly with each other. And it goes against everything that the planet and the moon stand for, but it is a very sprawling, beautiful story. We get to meet a lot of different characters along the way, and I think it is one that will definitely get you out of a reading slump. It is super interesting, and it is so relatable in some things. There are certain things that the child says as she's narrating that are really funny because she's talking about normal childhood experiences, normal experiences of relationships, of love, but in this really wacky, crazy concept. But it's hilarious how these very broad general themes and ideas really apply to this outlandish and completely unusual situation. So I think these comics are something that a lot of fantasy lovers will really like, and I highly recommend it if you want to check them out, and I think it'll be something to get you out of that reading slump. So the next recommendations that I have are The Selection, The Elite, and The One, and this is a trilogy written by Kira Cass that I think will really get you out of a reading slump. But don't expect these books to be anything like super special, spectacular. They are just really fun, quick reads. And the best way that I can describe it is it's like The Hunger Games meets The Bachelor. So it is basically about this world where these women are selected in order to vie for the hand of the crown prince. So women from all the different castes in this society are vying for the prince's hand to become the next princess of this kingdom. And that's where we begin with the selection. But our main character, America, does not want to be selected. She does not want to be part of this process, but she ends up being put into the process because her mother is like making her do it, because if she makes it to a certain point, they get some money. So there are a lot of financial compensations and rewards for being part of the selection process. So The Selection is the first book, The Elite is the second book, and The One is the last book. I don't recommend that you continue on after The One because it's not really America and Maxon's story anymore. It is just the story of their children, and they're just not as good in my opinion. But I think this trilogy will always hold a special place in my heart, and it's so fun and lighthearted that I think it'll definitely get you out of a reading slump if you are in one. It's very action-packed. It has those like Hunger Games feels with them all competing for the hand of the prince. But it's also got some more of those romance vibes going on because they are vying for this prince's hand. And there's a lot of interviews and a lot of tests that they have to go through. So there's a lot of fun trials. And I think that this is a series that you'll absolutely be able to breeze through. These books are not super long, and I think you'll have a really good time reading them. So they'll definitely get you out of a reading slump. And I would consider these to be more of dystopian than fantasy, but they are like fantasy dystopians, and I think that you'll absolutely love them. And the last books that I have to talk about in this video that I think will definitely get you out of a reading slump are The Infernal Devices. Now I'm overdue for a reread of this, but this is set in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and it is set in a world where there are half human, half angel beings, and they are considered Shadowhunters, and they have to hunt down demons. And this is a series that is set in the 1870s, so it is historical fantasy, and it is absolutely beautiful. I think that it is a really fun, adventurous series. There's a lot of issues that they have to face, a lot of fun demons that they have to take down, and the love triangle in this one between Tessa, Will, and Jem is one that will take root in you, and it is one of my favorite love triangles to ever exist. I'm not a big fan of the love triangle trope, but in this series it absolutely works. This has to be my favorite series in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. There are a lot of fun side characters in this too. I love Charlotte, I love Henry, I love Jessamine. She is such a fun character, and there's just some crazy things happening in these. And we learn a lot of family secrets in these books, and it is just such a beautiful series. If you have not read them, I highly recommend them. And then I recommend reading the Last Hour series as well, which is following the children of some of the characters in this series. But I think that this trilogy in particular will help you get out of a reading slump if you have been struggling to read a book, if you haven't been really getting absorbed into anything you're reading. These will definitely suck you right in. So those are all the books that I have to mention in this video, but I think that any of these books will help you get out of a reading slump. They are definitely ones that I absolutely love and adore and suck me in from the very beginning. So I think they'll be ones that keep you gripped and on the edge of your seat throughout the whole books. And that is exactly what you want if you want to get out of a reading slump. But if you have any recommendations for me that you want to leave me of books that have helped you get out of a reading slump, I'd love to hear it for the next time that I'm in a slump. But I always love getting new book recommendations regardless, so please leave them down below if you have them. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you for the next one. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are doing well. Whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for watching.